I want to welcome you on behalf of, first of all, the government of St. Martin, and in particular the Department of Youth Affairs, to what we term today as Children's Rights Roundtable Conference. I'm happy that you've taken the time out of your busy schedule, because I know this week is a very, very busy week, and we have many activities which are taking place, but you have found it fit to be here, so that is very important for us to discuss children's rights. This morning, we want to, in particular, welcome with us our guest, who is actually a specialist in children's rights, and to be specific, and I'm sure that he will give you some more information, but specifically, he has dealt with the areas of child abuse. I'm going to tell you a little more about him. His name is Mr. Niels Kasper, and he has worked and carried many caps for many, many years. Yesterday, in my discussion with him, he said, "You were very young," but I guess he probably thought I was young. He doesn't really know my age, so. But it tells us that he has been in the area of children's rights for a very long time, and we want to really thank UNICEF Netherlands for affording us the opportunity to allow him to be with us. He just traveled from St. Eustatius, where they also held the roundtable discussions. He was in Sabre the week before, and now last but certainly not the least, he's here in St. Martin with us for us to deal with, I would say, 5 key areas which have been termed as priority areas by the Kingdom Task Force of the Netherlands. In the conclusions of the Kingdom Conference, which was held last year, April 2014 in Aruba, the representatives of the government of the Netherlands, Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Martin, they agreed to establish a task force to come up with an action plan regarding the cooperation of the countries based on the recommendation from the various UNICEF reports. I'm sure you have seen the UNICEF reports. You have been also, I would say, stakeholders in the process of the UNICEF report, because you were interviewed by the consultants who were here. I believe it was in 2012, if my memory serves me correct. But last year, the UNICEF reports were presented in the Netherlands, and of course it got quite some response from, I would say, the governments, in particular the second chamber of the Netherlands. And so they felt it important that there should be collaboration in ensuring that all the needs of the children within the kingdom are met, and there should be absolutely no difference. And so it was important for them to indicate that there should be a task force, and that's why the task force was established. There's representation from each island, and this task force looked at the UNICEF reports, also did a scan of what is happening on the islands regarding children's rights, and then came up with 5 specific priority areas, of course, as the first step towards collaborating. What was said is we would have to have the various islands look at what is happening, what is still needed, the resources, and of course, how not only on island stakeholders can collaborate, but also within the kingdom. Then UNICEF found it fitting to allow the expert, Mr. Niels Kasper, to assist the islands in the process. And so we are now here, commencing today with the roundtable sessions. And the sessions, we will be having 2 sessions each day. It's a half-day program because we know you're very busy. And then ultimately on the 3rd day, we are hoping that with your collaboration and of course your commitment towards the cause, that we can come up with priority areas regarding the 5 key, I would say, concerns and challenges that we are faced with on St. Martin, and also not only on St. Martin, but within the entire kingdom as such. The first one being family as the central. The second one, absence of the father in the upbringing of the child. The third, child abuse. And the fourth being safety net and also infrastructures. And that's basically 2 in 1 discussion. So today we want to really welcome you. We will be giving you instructions as to how we will proceed as such with the various day discussions, and hopefully that you feel free to really share and to come up with the suggestions in regards to how we should move forward. This is just the beginning of a process. We do hope that one of the outcomes of this meeting is the establishment, or at least you giving government the responsibility to ensure that there is a national commission established for children's rights. And that National Commission for Children's Rights will have the makeup of not just government, but also non-governmental organizations. And so I'm hoping that you can agree on that, and that proposal can also be put forward in our report that will be ultimately given to, first of all, the Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, who will ensure that it gets to the Council of Ministers and also to Parliament. I also, on behalf of the Minister, want to welcome you. As you know, the budget debate continues today, and so she's really engaged as such, and expresses her apologies for not being able to be here this morning. But she will be with us at the closing, where we will be able to share with her the various recommendations and outcomes from this process. And I'm sure that that's, of course, I believe, the most important aspect, because we need to get her blessing on it as well. So let's pray that the budget is finalized on Thursday, so that she can be with us also on Friday morning, God's willing. At this point, I would like to actually invite Niels to say a few words, and then I will come back and basically outline how we will proceed, and then have our first speaker for the day present.
Good morning to everyone. Fantastic to be here, and I think all of us want to leave very enthusiastic and inspired in terms of what we want to do. Our objective is to make St. Martin the best place in the world for a child to be born into, and for a young person to grow up in. And that requires the engagement of the entire society. It's not just a question of what's being discussed in the Parliament, but it's what every single one of us can do, and what each of the sectors can do. The real sovereignty of St. Martin's, what is it? Is it the beaches? The hotels? It's the people. You take out everybody here in St. Martin's, and what is it? Just empty beaches, empty mountains. So the real sovereignty is its people, which means investing in the people is investing in the sovereignty of St. Martin. You are not doing a charity act when you are talking about what's happening to children, what's happening to families, how can we strengthen strong families, how can we help dysfunctional families, and so on. You are talking about the real sovereignty of this country. You shouldn't apologize for doing that sort of thing. Sometimes it seems as if the police and the infrastructure and all of that, they have the right of getting whatever they want. Actually, those of you working on strengthening the families and strengthening the people of St. Martin are the ones that are really building the sovereignty of this country. So you should have the first go in terms of resources, in terms of what needs to be invested. But we need to be wise in how we go about it, because we know that sometimes we are not as successful as we would like to be. And sometimes we take the child and split it in bits and pieces. Health deals with one bit and pieces, social services deals with another one, education tries to deal with the head, and so on. And we should look in a more holistic way how we deal with this. In my visits to Ceiba, St. Eustatius, and here, what it's very clear is that our biggest challenges seem to be in the 10 to 20, 25 age group. But we would like in these 3 days to look at what happened between 0 and 10 that we didn't do right, that makes us have the problems that we have between 10 and 20 in particular. Very often we talk about teenagers as being problematic. But if they even run in conflict with the law and so on, the question is how many of us adults fail them on the way? What did we do wrong? Because they were born as babies and we failed them on the way. What is it that we need to do better? And finally, we will during these days both look at the short-term, quick wins, things that we can quickly try to succeed with. But at the same time, we need to be humble enough to recognize that these things sometimes take generations. If we do absolutely everything right as of today, and a baby is born today, and we make sure that that mother is supported, that family is supported, and all the measures are correctly carried out, when will that child be 18? In 2033. If you want a whole new St. Martin generation, that's the time span you're looking at. Now, they don't vote. So all political parties, all sectors of society, because they don't vote, we should have a unified approach around how we are going to invest in them. That shouldn't be sort of a public debate other than how do we do it better. And I hope that we from here can come out having a unified approach that can help build a national consensus around the policies relating to young people and children. The business sector, churches, the media, all of us who will be analyzing need to contribute to analyze how do we create a better protective environment. I was mentioning the other day, we sometimes, I think many of us are very involved in churches and have a faith. Still, the reality is that children sometimes are very unprotected in churches. Why? Because it's unthinkable that something wrong could happen to a child there. And still all the studies show that while the levels, for instance, of sexual abuse among children participating in a church might be slightly lower than in society at large, the silence is much greater, which means they are more unprotected if they are abused because they are not believed. This type of analysis needs to be done. In the media in Brazil, a study was made of all the 50 largest newspapers for a whole year. how do they report about teenagers and young people? 64% of all the articles just reported negative things about them. And very seldom were there articles that highlighted good things that they did. Somehow, we become a little bit vicious against them. We love them when they are small, and then when they are in that 10 to 20, we somehow hammer at them. Why? The same seems to happen in families. In a study in Costa Rica of 3,500 churches, the majority of the churches had the same problem. They seemed to lose them in that period of time. Why? Something among us adults is not as it should be. And those are some of the things that we hope to look at. In Aruba, there are a lot of hotels, just like here. And still there's only one hotel that has established one room where mothers that have a baby can bring the baby and go down and breastfeed and then continue working, cleaning rooms and so on. The business sector tries to wash its hands of the family responsibilities. How do they want to build a strong country that way? How do they want to hand over that responsibility? Oh, that's for social services. We are supposed to make money. You don't make money if you undermine the country, if you undermine the real sovereignty of the country. That's why every sector needs to be involved in the strengthening. That's why we're here. Now, each of you are supposed to be the ones that are going out to mobilize your colleagues. In Brazil, that study was done by an association of journalists that wanted to improve how they related to children's issues. And so in different sectors of society, everybody must analyze, am I contributing to build a strong St. Martin? Or what am I doing? An employer, how do they treat their staff? Do they consider that their staff have a family, or do they just see them as pawns that they put here, take here, you work from this hour to this hour, in total disregard of the family? All of these things need to be analyzed so that every sector of society contributes to build a strong St. Martin. And whoever doesn't want to come on board, they should know that they are undermining St. Martin. And that's why you are gathered here. Thank you.
First, I must thank Youth Affairs for inviting us to be a part of this roundtable session. And as we go through the day, I pray that the information that is shared is valuable for us to come to a consensus on how do we move forward in putting the right things in place to assist in the development of the rights of the child for St. Martin. In recent times, we have seen numerous cases of families in crisis, and I think Mr. Casper summarized it well when he looked at the key involvement of all stakeholders in the development and also the ownership of the rights of our children here in St. Martin. As we go through this presentation, we are going to be looking at some key points of interest. We are going to assess the evolution of the family, the process in which the family went through. We're going to look at a definition. And I must say, I must apologize, there has been a little slight change in your copy versus what is on the screen with regards to the definition of the family, the composition of the family dynamics, and we are going to conclude. As we see here on the screen, this picture here depicts the indigenous family. Now, if you look closely at the picture, you would recognize that something key is identified there. The role of the family, the role of each individual within the family. The father, the protector, the provider, he has the arrow in his hand, he has the bird on his shoulder, and the mother, the caregiver, the nurturer. Those roles have always been with us, and those roles continue to exist within the family even to today. Another key player in the dynamic and the change of the family within the Caribbean region, and for us persons of color, slavery, that during that period, families were actually split up. They were sold in different directions. Persons went to different areas. And again, when it was not conducive or lucrative for the employer at that time, again, the movement took place. Then we had the industrial period. During that industrial period, again, movement. There's a constant movement that is taking place within the family, the movement that affects the family. During the industrial period, you had, while the roles, going back to the first slide, the role of the mother was to nurture. In the industrial period, we realized that you had women that went out to work, more women that joined the workforce. Apart from that, the man who was the provider continued in that role as he migrated, because in countries, other Caribbean countries, on islands where there was an urban and a strong rural composition, persons moved from the rural, so you moved away from your family and you went into the urban areas for work. For us here in St. Martin, some of our families experienced where the father left the nest and he traveled, migrated to Curacao, to Aruba, Panama, the Dominican Republic, and different areas where he worked. Now, that in itself was a player on the family, because as you moved, it did not mean that you moved with your family. You were the breadwinner, you were the provider, so you moved to work and provide. And what happens when you move? I guess loneliness sets in and another family is formed, probably, in some cases. So that is another dynamic. Then we had the liberation movement. In the late 60s, early 70s, we had the women's liberation movement. During that era, those traditional norms and practices and roles were actually challenged. During that period, also, we saw where women became more empowered and they began standing up for more existence, more acceptance. They stood up for a place to be recognized and accepted as an individual within society. So therefore, from that period and onwards, we recognize women became more assertive, women became more educated, and today, as a result, we have more women in college, more women in high-ranking positions, more women being challenged with that original primary role as the nurturer of the family. Then, today, in modern era, what do we see here? You have a family sitting together, they are connected physically, but emotionally and interaction, there's no interaction really taking place between the family because of technology. That's also another dynamic and key player in the dynamics of the family. So you have here a mother, a daughter, and a father, all on technological devices. They are connected externally. But when it comes to that internal connection, that connection seems to be very disconnected. Okay? So then, what is a family? According to Burke, a developmental psychologist, a family can be defined as a complex social system in which person's behavior influences the behavior of others in both direct and indirect ways. You may say, but where's the blood relationship? There is. You don't have to have a blood relationship also to be considered as a family, because we have kids who are fostered. They are in different settings. You have institutionalized kids, which is not always the best, but you have institutionalized kids, and that is also considered as a family. Believe it or not, in the work environment, that's also a family, because you spend a large part of your time within that environment. So that too becomes a family. So there is and when you talk about a complex, because there are the dynamics, the individuals within, as human beings, there are several dynamics that occurs in our interaction, in our relationships with each other. So we are a complex social system. What is the role of the family? What are our roles and responsibilities? The family being a dynamic force, our role is to produce. Now the good book tells us that we are to go forth and multiply and replenish the earth. We replenish the earth by producing, having babies. Those babies, when they grow up, they have babies, and so the cycle continues. Without having babies, without reproduction, you don't have a society. So the family provides that opportunity for the continuity of society. Nurture. The family is a support system for the child, where the growth and development and care of the child takes place. The child can move through the various stages of development within that sphere. So the family provides a critical space for the nurturing and that emotional, psychological, social development of that child to take place. Now imagine when something goes wrong there, what the effects will be. Thirdly, the family's role and responsibility is to pass on key values. Values that are going to help to shape who you are. Values that are going to help you to form a perspective of life. Values that are going to help you to form an identity. In this sector here, in this area, families also pass on cultural beliefs. We learn about our history. We learn about our genealogy. We even get our DNA from the family. That's how we are identified. So imagine if something goes wrong there, what then happens to us as a society? Therefore, we see the key role, how important this element, this part of society, this structure within the society, how important that structure is, the family.